When stranded in the wilderness and forced to survive, you typically have minimal gear. This means that knowledge and natural resources are your best friend. It's vital that you stay calm, then assess your situation and prioritize. You need to have a way to get warm and dry. Fire can be difficult without the right tools, and you should typically wait until just before dark anyways. You can, and should, start on a shelter right away. Sometimes building a shelter might take all day, and other times it will go quickly. I've had shelters take 12 hours to build, and others that I put up in 10 minutes. Welcome to Wild Harvest Heroes. Let's start the video. Shelter basics. For my first survival challenge, I built a wooden frame, put down a layer of flat leaves like shingles, and then layered bundles of grass. The problem was that I built it too far off of the ground. I spent all day making a perfect waterproof roof that didn't keep me dry because of the height. When it started to rain and hail, the 30-mile winds blew it right into my shelter. I was sleeping on the ground because I didn't have time to make a bed. My fire was put out within a few hours. Only an emergency blanket saved me from hypothermia. The only equipment I took on my wet weather challenge this year was a knife. There was heavy rain in the forecast, so I needed a good shelter right away. I also knew a fire wasn't going to happen. To start my shelter, I found an old apple tree that created a natural canopy to block most of the rain and wind. There was brush growing up around the edges that created another barrier. I cut down a small maple for a ridgepole and wedged it in the crotch of 2 trees. This time, I kept it low to the ground, about 4 high. I cut a bunch of smaller branches to create a frame for the lean-to and rested them on the ridgepole at 45 degrees. Then I pulled piles of dead grass from the area and piled it on the roof about 1 thick. I used the remaining grass for a bed. This shelter took me about 90 minutes to complete. It kept me dry through several days of pouring rain. You can find dozens of different types of elaborate shelter designs with some research. However, most of them don't make sense for a normal survival scenario. You don't need a big fancy shelter to make it a few days or even a few weeks. Once you're in the field, you'll be able to come up with your own design for that specific challenge. I'll go over some specific designs for you below. But remember that small, strong, and simple is always better. Shelter basics. There are a few general rules you should always follow, no matter what shelter design you choose. 1. Be selective on your location. It absolutely blows my mind how many times I see a survivalist build a shelter, only to get flooded out at night or consumed by insects. I typically look at a minimum of 3 separate locations for a shelter before I make a decision. No matter how nice a site you think it is, there could be a better one just over the hill. Look for a flat area that is either on the side of a hill or at the top. It's much easier to build a functional shelter on flat ground. Never build on low ground or close to a body of water. If possible, find a spot that is clear of rocks and ground vegetation because less work is better. There should be plenty of building materials in the nearby area, with the majority being dead or downed trees. Also, be aware of wind direction and sun location. 2. Limit energy and resources. I often see survivalists using dozens of feet of cordage to build a shelter, or they spend hours sawing down poles. There's no need to go through all that. All this does is burn a bunch of calories, risk injury, and use up resources. It's much smarter to limit these activities. Use downed poles for framework. Use 2 tree trunks to break poles instead of sawing or breaking them with your foot. Find a way to use gravity to hold your framework together instead of using a bunch of cordage. 3. Smaller is better. Don't fall into the trap of thinking that a spacious shelter will be more comfortable. First, you have limited time and energy available to build. You may not finish your shelter by dark if you go too big. It's better to build a small shelter and then revise it later if needed. Second, the more space to heat inside the shelter, the colder you will be. Whether you are heating your shelter with a fire or with body heat, the goal is to be warm and toasty. This doesn't work with large shelters. Third, you should always prioritize the quality of your shelter. For example, if you save time by building a smaller shelter, you can make the roof and walls thicker to withstand more wind and rain. 4. A bed matters. You need to get off the ground. The ground sucks more heat out of your body than the air above you. In many cases, getting off the ground is more important than having a roof over your head. you should always have at least $4 of compacted insulation underneath you. Keep in mind that 1 of leaves will compact down to $2 when you lie on it. You can also build a platform or make a hammock to get off the ground. 5. Consider the elements. The shelter design should be specific to your scenario. If you are in an area prone to rain, you absolutely must focus on a waterproof roof and getting off of the ground. If you are in an especially cold area, you need to focus on insulation. Think about whether you want your fire inside the shelter or outside. Don't forget that a fire inside requires good ventilation to prevent carbon monoxide poisoning. If it's hot at night, you may want to opt for a more open shelter with some airflow. If it's really windy, you will want strong, thick walls to help block the wind. Don't forget about thick walls to keep away predators or a platform to avoid insects. Shelter types. There are just a few basic types of shelters that I suggest you learn. You can always start with these principles, then get more complex as needed. Natural shelters. I highly suggest that you use the features of the area to help make your shelter design more solid and simple. For example, I once found a rock jutting out of a hillside and built a lean-to up against it. This made it more stable, required no ridgepole, and gave me a heat reflector for my fire. In some cases, you can use a rock face, a fallen log, or live trees to help with your structure. Sometimes you can get an entire shelter out of natural features. Lean-to. This is by far my favorite type of shelter because of its simplicity. It can also be combined with other building elements to make it more functional. Start by finding 2 trees about 10s apart. Get a long ridge pole and either rest it on branches or tie it anywhere from 3 to 6 high, depending on the size of your lean-to. Gather lots of shorter, thinner poles and lean them at a 45-degree angle against the ridge pole. Debris hut. This shelter is designed for scenarios in which you will not have a fire. It's basically a large natural sleeping bag to keep in your body heat. Take 2 4 poles to make an A-frame and drive it into the ground. Then use a ridge pole that is 8 to 10 long and rest the end on top of the A-frame. Collect lots of shorter, thinner poles and lean them against the ridge pole on both sides at a 45-degree angle. Snow cave. This shelter is designed for sub-zero weather with several feet of snow. You often can't find the resources you need to build a shelter in these conditions, so the snow itself is the best option. You will either need to find a drift or manually pile up the snow so it's at least 4 tall. Dig down to ground level and dig out a door just large enough for your body. Next, collect several sticks about 6 long and drive them straight down into the top of the drift every few feet. Thank you for joining me in this episode of our survival skills series on Wild Harvest Heroes. I hope you found these shelter building tips helpful and feel more prepared for your next adventure in the wilderness. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel for more survival skills and outdoor tips. Don't forget to hit the notification bell so you never miss an update. If you have any questions or want to share your own shelter building experiences, leave a comment below. I love hearing from you. Stay safe out there, and see you in the next episode.